Hello, welcome to a bonus episode of Legendary Adventures podcast. I'm Paul, and I am joined by my wife Mandy.
Hello.
And I was going to give some first impressions of Tears of the Kingdom. It's kind of become a norm that I bring Mandy
on all
related
things
stuff, just to get a sort of non-Zelda fan's perspective.
Yep.
I guess you're the guest, so you tell me. What did you think? You played a little bit, 30 minutes.
A little, not a lot, because, kids. It's my turn, Mom. When do I get a turn, right? So, I played just a little bit. The opening got a little frustrating for me, just because it was like, I'd start running through the cave, and then I'd be like, oh, stop. Zelda's got to say something. Isn't this so creepy? This darkness, it's making people sick, so let's walk through it.
Yeah, it's very story-heavy opening, especially compared to
Breath of the Wild, where you kind of just, woke up naked and ran around.
I mean, yeah, you got stopped by obstacles and
yeah, but there's a little less.
But there wasn't so much
story.
Breath of the Wild handled its story just kind of in dumps. You would get to a point, and then they would just
dump yeah, that's right.
A bunch on you, and then they would leave you alone.
Usually at a shrine or something, and all of a sudden you'd hear Zelda's breathy voice. Link.
Yeah.
Very breathy voice.
When you met the king, or when you met Impa, or when you found a memory.
Yeah, there were, the memories, that's what it was. It's very story there. So that part felt just a little I just want to get started. Just let me get started. But I kept be like, okay, here's,
for me, I don't know. This was different. I'm normally one that just kind of wants to get in.
Mm-hmm. But you liked having that little story before.
But I was kind of into it. I was actually walking with Zelda, which is not something I normally do.
I was running ahead of Zelda, and that was probably my frustration, is that I would be like, run, 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 run. And then it'd be like, I can't go anywhere. Yeah,
that's not something I normally do. I would say 99% of the time, I don't actually do that. I run ahead and I do that. But I was actually I was just kind of into it, the atmosphere of it, and walking with her, and very different from the way I normally play
Zelda.
A video game. Not even just Zelda, just a video game in general. I get kind of bored by kind of forced story moments like that a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I did replay it just to kind of get our daughter past it. She started it and then decided she was done with it.
Pretty quickly, because she was bored of that part. She's a little, she's 5, so Zelda's a little much for her most of the time.
The games get to be too complicated for her. But she wants to try it, and, her sister tried it, and so I did try to rush through it, and, it was a little, trying to rush through it, and just kept getting stopped. And so I can see that, and, on a replay, that's not going to be as interesting because you know the story. But my first time firing it up,
I
was kind of into it, and I was actually kind of playing along the way that they want you to.
Yeah,
and it's not something that I would normally do.
Yeah, I only made it to the first shrine, so I only got that first. What's the power called?
Ultra Hand.
Ultra Hand. So far, I thought it was going to be, it's a little glitchy for me. Not glitchy, but just a little fiddly.
It could be a little fiddly.
It's a little fiddly trying to rotate it, trying to get it the way you want it and all organized. That can be a little fiddly, but it feels very Breath of the Wild. It's got that same kind of feel to it, very open world. I know, you're oh, where'd you find that camp stuff? We found different things at different points and different, and that was only within the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So, even with, because, at the beginning, on the, what was it called? The plateau in Breath of the Wild, it does kind of force you to, follow those, you got to learn these specific techniques, and that way you can move on. And this does the same, but it felt a little more open worldy even than Breath of the Wild, maybe. Because The plateau seemed small, but I feel like this feels even bigger. I don't know if that makes sense.
It could be a bigger area. I think...
Or maybe just the levels and
the Great Sky Island was what it's called. I think it is in some ways less directed, right? Like Breath of the Wild, you started out in that cave and you got the Sheikah Slate and you walked out and like the camera zoomed to show you the path with the old man, and you also, that was the way you had to go to activate the tower to get the shrines, etc., etc. This time, when you got out onto the island, it didn't really direct you in that way.
No.
Camera moves to direct you.
No, you just had to kind of wander and...
You kind of wander, and then you find the steward construct,
that tells you that
that gives you the Purapad, the replacement for the Sheikah Slate.
And I didn't find that at first. You had to be like, oh, it's over there. Go find it.
So like in that sense, it was a little less directed.
Which I don't know if it's good or bad, because like I said, like I didn't find that at first. I was just like wandering around. I don't know. I'm also not very patient when it comes to reading sometimes the text and what they're saying. You know, like I said, we have a 5 and a 7-year-old who are sitting on top of me and climbing over my legs while we're watching this game, and so it's like, oh, what did they say to do? I don't know. Keep walking around.
Yeah.
Climb some trees and find some birds' nests.
I mean, in a way, that's the way you're supposed to play Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Just wander around and poke at stuff. So, you know, in that sense, in that you weren't given a whole lot of direct pointers at that very start, I think it is a little less directed. But then I think, on the whole, though, I think it is more directed.
Yeah.
It pointed you to the Temple of Time to go to first.
Yeah, I still didn't catch up on that.
And, well, you know, it marked it up on your map. And
yeah, it did. I just thought that was where... I don't know.
But
I got confused and thought that's like, oh, that's going to be the ultimate goal. Eventually we have to get there to get Zelda. But I don't know. I'm not, you know.
But it directs you to go there, and from there you're directed to the first shrine. And, you know, it's the only shrine that you're pointed to at that time, and it's near to you. Mm-hmm. And you might be able to vary it up. I mean, Breath of the Wild did this too, where the first shrine they wanted you to go to was right close to you. This was a little further away than that. But, you know, they pointed you to this shrine, and then once you got out of that shrine, they pointed you to only 2 more shrines. Breath of the Wild was like, here's all 3 more. Mm-hmm. And so you complete those other 2 shrines, you go back to the Temple of Time, and then they say, oh, there's a 4th one. Why don't you go here? And then they pointed you there. Which you didn't get that far.
No, I did not get that far.
But that was a little more structured, and just kind of moving around the island, I think some of the obstacles you had to get by and get around directed you maybe a little more. Maybe just made it less free-flowing, I guess, maybe then.
I don't know.
I don't know if you felt that way, but, you know, stuff like there are points where you have to ride a rail in order to reach another location. Right?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that point.
Put a hook onto a
yeah, I did the hook, but just within the shrine.
Ride the rail, yeah. And maybe there's another way around. I don't know. It seemed to me like you had to ride a rail.
You have to eventually do that.
And
I mean, you could just attempt to jump off a cliff and hope to hit some water, but... As you found out, that's easier said than done sometimes.
It can be a little difficult. I feel like that's maybe a little tangential to what I'm talking to right now. Okay. But, you know, I did drive off stuff and try to move around, and I felt like it didn't steer as much as I thought it would. You know, some of that's probably, for me, bleed over from having played Skyward Sword, a past Zelda game. I felt like I had a little more control over where I moved in Skyward Sword, but I could be completely wrong about that too, and I'm just misremembering. But yeah, I missed the water once or twice, and smacked into the ground.
Smacked into the ground,
because you got to land in the water, otherwise you're gonna die.
Doesn't matter how shallow it is, and you can hit a lily pad.
You can't hit a lily pad. I did that.
Yeah, and that still counts.
But like some of the areas, the ice area, right? Mm-hmm. Breath of the Wild, yeah, when you went into that first ice area, you had to have warm clothes or cook some spicy food
Yeah.
to get you through. This time, I didn't find any warm clothes until after I was
fairly far through it.
The shrine at the top of the ice area. And I don't know if people can find it earlier or not. I have no idea. But it did seem a little more restrictive, at least at first. They put sheets of ice on the walls so that you
can't
climb them
climb
and you slip down the sheets of ice, which was not something that I can recall ever seeing.
I don't remember sheets of ice. No, it was just rain on you, and then you'd be like, shoot, there we go.
And so, it took me a little more time to figure out my way up to the goal, whereas with Breath of the Wild, it was more or less just kind of run straight there. You maybe fought a couple
bad guys in between.
Goblins, but it was a little more straightforward.
So, I'm just thinking back on it and thinking back on the opening video and all this stuff. So, the islands, those dropped down, right? From wherever what's that?
Stuff fell down, the Zonai.
Because I was just realizing, like, you really don't, I mean, you've run into a couple bad guys. I mean, other than the soldiers that are there to kill trespassers, like, that's all I've run into. And so, I mean, it would make sense if that's all that was on there, because it dropped down. Because, in that video with the castle, and castle was being, had all the red, but you could see stuff coming down with that blue glowing light. So I'm assuming that those are all from
There's stuff that definitely fell from the sky when the island showed up. They haven't really explained yet why the island showed up.
Yeah.
Or how, or...
I think it has something to do with the hand.
It's something to do with Ganon breaking free, and, that hand.
And Raru. Scooby-Doo's best pal, Raru.
Exactly. So, something to do with that. They have,
There's still a lot of...
There's been more story compared to Breath of the Wild, I feel like.
Early
but
on.
It's still
developing.
A lot of mystery and developing. And, you don't fully know what's going on. I'm pretty sure there's some time travel shenanigans going on.
Well, it makes sense. It's aliens.
Obviously.
So, but I mean, so far if you enjoyed Breath of the Wild, you'll probably enjoy this one at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. It's very Breath of the Wild-like. I like the new powers. You haven't got to mess around with them all yet, but fuse, so you get to combine your weapons and
I haven't
shields
done
and
that
stuff
one
with
yet.
fuse, which using that has been all right. I've been using it a lot with my arrows, which you have to fuse something every single time you want to. You can't just
you can't make
and the next time you draw
have
your
a
bow,
bunch.
Yeah,
until you run out of that
one.
item.
Yeah, you're just fusing it every time. But it's been kind of to the point where I fuse one and use it, and then I might want to switch to another, or I might just pull out my other weapon and use it at that point. It's been pretty smooth so far. I like.
So will they?
Descend.
I'm assuming they will not be having how there were the shock arrows and were there bomb arrows, or there were different arrows last time. So they're getting rid of that because you found some kind of bomb.
Yes, bomb flowers.
Flowers and different things.
Yeah, so you're not going to find any elemental arrows, I don't think.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, you had standard, you had ice, fire, shock, and bomb. They seem to be doing away with those elemental arrows and are instead just going to do it all through fusing. So I found fire fruits, which you can fuse with your arrows to get fire arrows, and I could fuse white chew jelly to get ice arrows, and bomb flowers to get bomb arrows.
Yeah.
So that seems to be
their replacement instead of doing that.
And you can fuse other stuff too, just to kind of add a little extra punch to your arrow, I guess. At least it seems. I did fuse a piece of flint to an arrow at one point just to see it. And it didn't seem to do a whole lot different. But
but maybe it did a little more damage. Maybe it was a little stronger or something. Yeah,
and the key swing, when you pick it up in the description, it says that it'll make your arrows fly farther if you fuse it.
Okay.
And then the Keith's eyes, which we saw in the demonstration, turn it into a homing arrow.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That'll be cool. Because I'm always real bad at aiming. I mean, you saw me tonight. I'm like, I swing the sword, but that's about it. Can swing the sword. That's what I got.
It's all you need sometimes.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
But that was nice. The Ascend's nice, where you get to zip up to your stuff. The Recall's been nice.
That.
I've actually been using some of that. Recall's nice in that I can
get
stuff back if I mess it up, which I did.
Yeah.
After going to reaching the surface, I went to a shrine that I saw as I was descending.
Yeah.
And it was a shrine where I had to take logs and use them in various ways in order to
build a raft and
ascend up a hill.
Oh, that's right.
And then ultimately build a raft to get across a lake that you wouldn't be able to
with a waterfall,
across. Yeah. And get a treasure chest and then get to the end of the shrine.
Yeah.
And I got the treasure chest and I set my raft off and was going to hop on and I missed it.
And so it was nice.
By me. So it was nice just to be able to call it back to me.
And retry.
And
try that jump again.
Yeah. And just some of the goofy stuff that you can do. I don't know that I'm doing the goofiest stuff.
But you did say, like, at one point, you're like, oh, look, I've got all these things and I'm fusing them together and it just looks a little, I think you said janky. Like, just looks a little, like...
No, I mean, it was a little doofy.
A little funky, doofy.
Right? It was that raft again. Like, I shot myself a little off, and so I wasn't able to jump to the end, and I was in a waterfall, and the current probably would carry me away.
So you were trying to mess with the different...
So I had to get my raft over to the land I wanted to get to.
So you pulled a piece apart.
I pulled a piece off, and I shoved it on kind of funny, and then I adjusted one of the fans, and I set myself off, and it did what I wanted to. It turned me right to the land and right where I could walk off the raft.
You've got this wonky looking...
But it looked very silly.
Yeah, you got this wonky little raft.
Yeah. And it made me laugh. And there was, after doing the shrine up on the icy mountain, you have to get down, and at first I didn't put two and two together with what they were telling me. There are, like, little gliders and rails.
And things, yeah.
The wings that
you were trying to build.
And you can set them on a rail and it slides off and you can just jump on and fly down.
And glide around, yeah.
I didn't notice that at first. And so I was constructing this crazy
looking
contraption where I was on, there are these floating blocks that just float.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to be affected by gravity. And so I grabbed one of those and I stuck a couple fans on it and I stuck one of the gliders on it to kind of try to point it down to where I wanted to go, and I went a little bit down, but not as far as I wanted to, so I was adjusting the fans, and, I was getting closer and closer to where I wanted to be, and I was fairly close to some water. I thought I could
maybe
steer myself
work,
as I was skydiving to make it, and I couldn't. Like, I smacked the land and died, and when I reloaded my save, that's when I figured out, there's these little rails here that let's just send the glider flying. And so I wrote it the way I think they intended it at that point. But I could, had I just waited for my battery to recharge and done another round, I could have taken that crazy contraption I built and got to the point where I could have done it that way. And it's fun and interesting that I could do that. It was really dumb. But I could do it.
It was the time-consuming method, but...
Yeah.
An ineffective method.
Pretty ineffective.
But yeah, I mean, it gives you it gives you more variety in ways of potentially accomplishing something, because everybody's going to build their things slightly different, or, not all of our rafts are going to look like the ones that they showed us in the, in their previews, because... We're just trying to figure out how to make it through.
You build it a little different. But no, it's been good starting off. I think there are some things that I like. There's little quality of life improvements, like you can drop weapons now out of your quick select.
Which is nice, instead of having to go into your inventory and
drop and then...
Yeah, because I noticed even when you were at a chest, you opened a chest and it popped up what you had of that, and you had too many to pick up the bow and arrow or whatever, so you were able to just pick one and drop it right there and still pick up that bow without having to go through the whole, like, click A and it's the bow, and you don't have room. Like, it just...
Yeah, and then having to go into your menu and then go to the right spot and find the thing you want and drop it. It was a much more involved process in Breath of the Wild that was kind of a friction point, and they've made it more or less frictionless.
There you go.
Is nice. I
like.
You know, there's just some little things like that where it's just a little more user-friendly.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, it feels like a new game so far for me, because you're in a whole new space, right? You're up on these cloud islands, but now you've hit the surface, and I know you came up onto the stables. Does it feel more like Breath of the Wild once you get down there? Just because it's like, oh, I've been here before, I've seen Beetle before, I've talked to this guy before. Like...
I'm not...
Or it still is pretty novel to you?
It's still feeling pretty new. So, this particular stable, like, I can remember going there in Breath of the Wild, but it was not one that I frequented it.
Oh, I was over... Isn't that the one by the wild horses and...
I mean,
the horse stable.
There's also some wild horses by the stable, right?
Okay.
There were,
I don't know.
You know...
This is the one I always remembered.
There were multiple stables in
like.
Breath of the Wild, and the ones that I tended to go to the most, Dueling Peaks, which this is the lakeside stable, which is nearer to Hyrule Castle. I would go to the Dueling Peaks, and there was one fairly close to the Great Plateau that I can't remember the name of, but had a guy who sold arrows at a good price, and I would always go there. And I would go to the stable in Akala, because, you know, that's where the Terrytown quest was, where you built that town, and so I would always go there as I was doing that, and those are kind of the main ones that I felt like that I frequented often.
Yeah.
I visited all the other ones, and I probably visited them more than once, but I didn't...
So it's not feeling super...
So this one, I'm like, I can't remember if this is how it was before, or if it's different. I mean, there's smoke billowing out of the mouth now, and no one acknowledged that at the stable, which I don't know why that is. Like, now you've got smoke shooting out of the thing. Maybe someone should mention something about it. But the people that I spoke to weren't just reiterating Breath of the Wild stuff. It was new stuff. They were, you know, there was a guy reading a newspaper who was talking about Tears of the Kingdom stuff. Oh no, the Rito have this crazy storm going on and it's super cold. You better get your warm
really
prepared
gear
if you're going to head that way. And oh, they're kind of hinting at maybe a side quest. Oh, they're looking for people to staff up the newspaper, which maybe that turns into a side quest. I don't know.
Yeah.
And there was another guy who was looking for someone, like, oh, hey, yeah, there are people that come by that with recipes, and I'm looking for them. And I didn't see them show up, but, you know, maybe that will happen. There was another guy saying that he's looking for the legendary sword, which I would assume is the Master Sword.
But maybe it's a different sword.
Maybe it's different, and he's not, I don't remember that.
Yeah, so the quests feel different.
Even the stable itself, the guy that runs it, you know, I went up there and you had to become a member just like Breath of the Wild, but then they kind of prompting like, oh, hey, do you know how to catch a horse, or do you know how the stables work? And I was just saying, yeah, I do.
Moving
because,
through,
you know, I'm familiar with that Breath of the Wild, and then he went, oh, wait, hey, I forgot to explain there's pony points.
Oh,
and
what are pony points?
What are pony points? That wasn't something in Breath of the Wild. And it's just you do certain things at stables and you earn points, and then with enough points they will give you something. So I got 1 pony point for coming to this stable, and they said get 2 more and you'll get a harness that will allow you to pull carts with your horse.
Okay. Which we did see that in the preview. Horses pulling machines and carts and things that you built.
So it didn't feel entirely the same.
Okay. That's
good. The Beetle's there, he's selling stuff, he does what he does. So that was the same.
Okay.
But it didn't recognize the lay of the land, like super, like, oh yeah, I absolutely know
where
place.
this is.
It felt familiar, but I could also tell that there was stuff I could see in the distance where I'm like, I know I didn't see that
I know
before.
that wasn't there before.
I didn't see
yeah.
that before. And so it's feeling different.
Oh, good.
But who knows if that'll keep up.
Keep up or not. Yeah. I mean, it's a good start, but like I said, I mean, I'm only 20 or 30 minutes in. You're probably an hour and a half, 2 hours in.
Yeah, I've played a few hours.
Yeah. You've played a little bit longer. You got started last night, enjoyed the
I do.
New York midnight.
The benefit of being in the West Coast, where the mountain time zone.
Yeah. Where you...
I didn't have to actually stay up to midnight to start playing, which I wouldn't have been able to, because
you have work in the morning, and
at work and
kids, and...
So the fact that, I was able to boot it up at 10 o'clock and play a little bit before bed was great.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Get a little sneak peek for you.
Yeah. So it'll be fun to play some more and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And maybe you will too. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
Well, great. Well, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this little bonus episode, just our first impressions. And, my plan is to just keep on going with the podcast how it is.
Its current format.
Yep, we're going to finish up Zelda 2 next week and then start A Link to the Past the week after that. And I'm just going to try to keep that schedule. But as I find stuff in Tears of the Kingdom I want to talk about, I might make a bonus episode. So subscribe, and maybe you'll get something like that. And I hope you enjoy the past Zelda games too, and you just want to listen to me ramble about them. All right, thanks for listening.
Bye.